The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Mitchell.
Present.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderwoman Gracia.
Present.
Alderman Coatar.
Here.
Alderwoman Rice.
Present.
Alderman Guenther.
Here.
Alderman Vollmer.
Present.
Alderwoman Martin.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderwoman Green.
Present.
Alderman Odenberg.
Here.
Alderman Rhodey.
Present.
Alderman Todd. Alderwoman
Present.
Davis.
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Muhammad.
Here.
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Ryan.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Present.
President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Cone.
Present.
26 present.
Quorum being present, we will begin the day's meeting with prayer, and please keep in mind all of the people who have been tested positive for coronavirus, the people we've lost this year due to coronavirus, and also the gun violence in the streets of the city of St. Louis, and all of their families. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We dispense with line item 3. Any introduction of honor guests? Any introduction of honor guests? Alderman from the 23rd. Alderman from the 23rd. Any further introduction of honor guests? Any further introduction of honor guests? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up?
Thank you, Mr. President. We're gathered here today on what is May 29th. It's on this day, Bing Crosby recorded the song White Christmas. In 1971, when I was 12 years old, Brown Sugar was a #1 song. But more importantly, this is Joe Vaccaro's national holiday, Learn About Composting Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman from the 10th. Approval of the minutes.
Approval of the minutes, May 21st, 2020.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I move for approve the minutes dated May 21st, 2020.
Second.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials. Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the aldermen's mailboxes. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Senior Services Fund Board. The reappointment of Ms. Mary Ann Nestor, who resides in the 16th Ward and whose term will expire April 17th, 2024. The reappointment of Mr. Chauncey Batchelor, who resides in the 17th Ward, whose term will expire April 17th, 2024. I respectfully request your approval of the reappointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 17th, eyes on the mayor's appointments.
Yes, Mr. President, I move for the appointment of the mayor's. I'm sorry, my phone's ringing here. I didn't expect that. Apologize.
Start over, Alderman.
Yes, Mr. President, I move for approval of the mayor's appointments.
Second.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Objection. No.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
No.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
That is the extent of report of city officials.
I don't know who continues to mute my mic, but City TV and everybody, my mic should never be muted, so make sure not to mute my mic any further. We've dispensed with line items 7 through 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 32, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated February the 25th, 2020 for the 1808 Washington Boulevard area in the city of St. Louis after finding that the area is blighted as defined in section 99.320 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, 2016 as amended, finding that there shall be available a 10-year tax abatement based on 95% of the assessed value of the increment improvements for 1800 through 1808 Washington Boulevard and pledging cooperation from the Board of Aldermen. Board Bill 33, sponsored by Alderman Guenther, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated January the 21st, 2020 for the 3535 through 3537 Missouri Avenue area in the city of St. Louis after finding that the area is blighted as defined in section 99.320 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, 2016 as amended, finding that there shall be available a 5-year tax abatement based on the 50% of the assessed value of the incremental improvements of 3535 through 3537 Missouri and pledging cooperation of the Board of Aldermen. Board Bill 34, sponsored by Alderman Todd, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated February the 25th, 2020 for the 811 through 817 North Kingshighway Boulevard area in the city of St. Louis after finding that the area is blighted as defined in section 99.320 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, 2016 as amended, finding that there shall be available a 10-year tax abatement based on 95% of the assessed value of the incremental improvements of 811 through 817 North Kingshighway and pledging cooperation of the Board of Aldermen. Board Bill 35, sponsored by Alderman Todd, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated February the 25th, 2020 for the 5143 Delmar Boulevard area in the city of St. Louis after finding that the area is blighted as defined in section 99.320 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, 2016 as amended, finding that there shall be available a 10-year tax abatement based on 95% of the assessed value of the incremental improvements for 5143 Delmar Boulevard and pledging cooperation of the Board of Aldermen. Board Bill 36, sponsored by Alderman Todd, an ordinance requiring the City of St. Louis Department of Health and Hospitals to provide drug addiction and alcoholism treatment programs for city residents who request such treatment and authorizing the department to contract with private entities to provide these programs or portions thereof. Board Bill 37, sponsored by Alderman Todd, an ordinance requiring the Land Reutilization Authority of the City of St. Louis to maintain or cause to be maintained at its sole cost and expense the premises and exteriors of all Land Reutilization Authority owned properties free from weeds or plant growth in excess of 6 inches, prohibiting the growth of noxious weeds and requiring all debris created by maintenance, cutting, and or destruction of vegetation on the property be removed and disposed in accordance with applicable city ordinances. Board Bill 38, sponsored by Alderman Todd, an ordinance requiring the City of St. Louis Department of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry to provide supervised recreation programs to all City of St. Louis parks and authorizing the departments to contract with private entities to provide these programs or portions thereof. Board Bill 39, sponsored by Alderman Todd, an ordinance amending Section 2 of Ordinance 68610, approved March 16th, 2010, and amended by Ordinance 70752, pertaining to the semi-annual registration fee to be charged the owner of any parcel residential property improvement by a residential structure or commercial property improved by a structure containing multiple dwelling units, which is vacant and has been vacant during a prior 6-month period, and which is in violation of the City of St. Louis by increasing said annual fee from $200 to $400, regardless of whether the owner is an individual, private entity, or public corporation. As such, the Land Reutilization Authority of the City of St. Louis. Board Bill 40, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro, an ordinance approving a blighting study and redevelopment plan for the 5080 Delmar Boulevard redevelopment area, after finding that the area is blighted as defined in Section 99.320 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri as amended, finding that the financial aid may be necessary to enable the area to be redeveloped in accordance with the plan, finding that there shall be available a 10-year tax assurance and pledging cooperation of the Board of Aldermen, and requesting various officials, departments, boards, agencies of the city to cooperate and to exercise their respective powers in a manner consistent with the plan. Board Bill 41, sponsored by Alderman Coatar, an ordinance promoting the use of energy efficient heating through the connection to the downtown stream distribution system, promoting the continual use of the downtown stream distribution system for any development project occurring in downtown St. Louis, seeking municipal financial incentives, prohibiting the Clean Energy Development Board of the City of St. Louis from approving financial for any project that would result in commercial building disconnecting from or no longer using the downtown steam distribution system for heat. A portion of the net profits be submitted to the remitted to the SWMDC and containing a severability clause. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to committee.
To the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bill 33, 34, 35, and 40. To Health and Human Services, Board Bill 36. To the HUD's Committee, Board Bill 32, 37, 39, and 41. And to the Parks Committee, Board Bill 38. That is the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
The following board bill was reported out of the Streets Committee with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 21, sponsored by Alderman Balmer, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission approving the name of a new public street located in the City Block 4084 in the approved La Colina subdivision. That is the extent of second reading report of standing committee.
We dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 25, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of City of St. Louis Department of Health to enter into and execute a contractor agreement with the National Association of County City Health Officials as part of Center for Disease Control and Prevention Grant, CFDA 93.421, to fund use of public health and safety team toolkit upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, and to expend funds by entering into contracts or otherwise for the grant purposes and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the perfection consent.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the perfection consent calendar.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman from the 10th. Alderman from the 1st.
Objection. Objection, Mr. President. I have my hands up. I would like this board bill taken off the perfection consent calendar. I didn't vote for it in committee, and I do not want to vote for it as a perfection consent calendar.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please put Board Bill 25 on the regular perfection calendar.
So noted. That is the extent of perfection consent calendar.
Board Bills for perfection.
Board Bill 25, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of the City of St. Louis Department of Health to enter into and execute a contract agreement with the National Association of County and City Health Officials as part of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention Grant, CFDA 93.421, to fund use of a public health and safety team toolkit upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, and to expend funds by entering into contracts or otherwise for the grant purposes and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from 20th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 25.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move for perfection of Board Bill 25.
Moved by the Alderman from the 20th.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from the 14th. Any discussion? Alderman from the 1st.
Alderwoman from the,
Alderman from the 1st.
I keep unmuting and they keep muting it back. I'm sorry. Mr. President, members of the board, I am in support of the board bill. I am not in support of who is going to sign the board bill. And so I am going to vote present on this bill until we get some more things clear about our quote unquote acting director of health, which there is no such title.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 20th, you recognize the close on the perfection of Board Bill 25.
thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This bill simply allows us to accept some grant money. And with that, I ask for your favorable support and of Board Bill 25.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 20th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we perfect Board Bill number 25. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus,
You gotta quit.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Alderwoman Tyus,
Hey, I unmute that. Keep muting it. I'm sorry. Present.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia,
Aye.
Alderman Coatar,
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice,
Aye.
Alderman Guenther,
Aye.
Alderman Balmer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin,
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Green,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderman Rhodey,
Aye.
Alderman Todd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan,
Aye.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro,
Aye.
President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley,
Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, Alderman Bosley, I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
26 aye votes and 1 present.
I think we have to redo one. Alderman Muhammad, we need you to unmute your video to do for your vote. We heard your audio, but we did not see your video. There you go. We got it. We got it. Madam Clerk?
26 aye votes and 1 present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. Alderman from 20th and perfected. Board Bill number 25. Third reading consent.
We have none.
Third reading report of engrossments.
We have none.
Report of enrollment.
We have none.
Courtesy resolutions.
We have none.
First reading of resolutions.
Resolution 13, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, calling elected officials and certain employees to take forgo on weeks paid to offset the city's pandemic-related expenses.
Alderman from the 23rd, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 13.
Sure. So what the resolution does, there's people making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. They also received that same 1.5% raise, that someone making $30,000 does. So what I'm calling on is that we, as the Board of Aldermen and all the elected officials and anyone making over $100,000, take a 1-week furlough. I realize that might be hard on some of the aldermen that do this as a full-time job. It's a resolution. It doesn't mean that we all have to. I know I will be taking that week. I might be in a little better position than some. I know that Alderman Oldenburg offered to also be a co-sponsor. So what I'd like to do is either pass this now, but otherwise, if you feel you want to put it in committee, I'm fine with that. So I'm open to listen to what everybody has to say.
All right, any further discussion on resolution 13? Alderwoman from the 20th. Alderwoman from the 20th.
My apologies, Mr. President. My hand is raised for another purpose,
Okay. All right, we'll have to, if it's not related to the resolution, we'll call you later. Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Prior to, I guess, doing a resolution like this, I would like to see what the actual numbers are. Some of us are privileged to have other careers outside of the Board of Aldermen. Some of us who are extremely busy don't, and I just would have some concerns about us jumping out there ahead of this and giving ourselves a pay cut when we haven't done a true assessment of what the needs are. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I definitely would support sending this to committee for further discussion. I think that, this is something that I wasn't expecting to see. I haven't heard any reports from Ways and Means yet in terms of I've heard expectations, but I haven't seen any, actuals or numbers and recommendations from either the budget office or ENA with respect to any particular budget recommendations or cuts for this particular fiscal year. So I do think that this is worthy of more discussion. The alderman from the 23rd and I both got elected at the same time at the height of the Great Recession back in 2009. He and I both went through, dealing with furloughs for city employees back then. And the Board of Aldermen did give back part of their salary at that point in time. So, I, of course, do see and consider that a potential option, for addressing some of these budgetary shortfallings. But I do think that it would require more discussion before we pass this out by the full board or take a vote today. So I would appreciate the alderman from the 23rd referring it to committee.
All right. Alderman from the 1st. Alderman from the 23rd, you'll have to wait until I call on you again.
Okay.
Alderman, please mute your mic. Alderman from the 1st.
I lost my video. I lost my video, so the alderman from the 25th said what I was going to say anyway, so thank you.
Okay. Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the alderman from the 23rd yield for a couple questions?
Yes, but before we get there, Alderwoman from the 11th, I see you and I have you marked down, but if you would do the little blue icon hand, because I'm taking from that list. I don't want you to, I didn't want you to continue to sit there with your hand up. So I do have you down, and I'll get to you. Alderman from the 23rd,
Yes,
will you yield the question
yes,
to the Alderman from the
sure.
24th? Alderman from 24th, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, alderman from the 23rd. Did you do the math on this to figure out what the potential savings would be if, for the city if this did go into effect?
Gerard actually did part of it for me. I don't have the total number, and that's why I am fine with it going to committee. I just know that if we're talking about, and I'm hoping that we correct this, but if we're talking about taking away ward capital, street lights, paving, sidewalks, dumpsters, speed humps, my issue was a lot of people got hurt through all this. Waiters, waitresses that didn't receive salaries. Even though the number isn't going to fix the budget, no matter what that number is, although the budget seems fairly balanced, we just need to get our ward capital back, which I hope and believe we will. This is more just a gesture that, we're also willing to take that same hit.
And I do appreciate that. And this is just kind of a strange time. I know typically on something like this, we kind of run around at City Hall and discuss it with each other. And given the situation now, we can't really do something like that. Have you talked to many other aldermen about this? I fear that there might be a disproportionate economic impact on this. I know that some aldermen may not even notice that a week's salary is not in their bank account, whereas I know some aldermen, they have children, this is their main income, and I do have some concern that this might really negatively affect some of our colleagues, and I'm just curious if you've spoken to some of those folks who may be the most impacted by something like this.
No. So here's my thing. I'm fine with it going to committee so we could further discuss it. But keeping in mind that later this year, next year, depending on the budget, we may have to ask the employees, all of them, to furlough. And if we're not willing to lead, I see, Alderwoman Davis thinks no. I'm glad that she feels differently, but I was here as well as she was when everyone had the furlough. And this is more, I feel we should lead the pack. Now, even back then, not everyone furloughed. This isn't a board bill, it's simply a resolution. doesn't mean that you have to forego a week's salary. I agree, there are some aldermen, and the aldermen are definitely underpaid. For the $38,000, there's a city employee out there that would do the work and be put in the position we are and say, we're gonna give you $38,000. Those employees are making around 100, some of them as much as $300,000. And they, you know, so I agree. That's why this is a resolution. It's not a board bill. It's not mandatory. I think it should be put in the committee, and I'm fine with whatever committee to discuss it. And I absolutely agree that not everyone is in a position to do this. And that's understandable, because some of us, well, I do it full time, but I'm a little bit more blessed. And I'm sure you're doing okay as an attorney, that, you know, so I'm sure there's certain of us that can, and you know, I will admit that Alderwoman Hubbard works hard for her neighborhood, and I don't know if this is her only job or not. I'm assuming it is, but this is I'm fine with it being referred to committee. I just think that at some point, if we're going to have to ask people, which we may not ever have to ask, but if we have to ask, we need to be leaders, not say, well, vote that everybody should take a furlough except us. So that's my thought process behind this.
I do appreciate that. And, you know, I'm supportive of the idea that we certainly do need to kind of lead by example here. I just have some concerns about the overall economic impact if 1 week makes a large difference in the budget, or if it's just kind of a token gesture, and then if it would put anyone in, you know, kind of dire economic straits here. But I think those are probably questions best left for committee. Thank you for yielding, and I have nothing further.
Alderwoman from the 14th.
Hold on. Shoot.
There we go. We have you.
Okay, I couldn't find it. I admire the alderman from the 23rd's heroism on introducing this. However, I am concerned about those city employees who are, you know, barely getting by on $15 an hour, and the effect that giving up a week's pay may have on them and their family, you know, especially in light of the fact that, you know, maybe now this is the only person still working in the family. And I think that, you know, sending it to committee allows us to discuss these eventualities. And also, I guess, is this a way to recover our money for the ward capital? Is this what we're trying to do, is recover that? If that's the case, I just don't think this is a way to recover ward capital by taking it away from other people. But we'll save that for the committee. Thank you very much.
All right.
I would like to
Alderman from the 23rd, please mute your mic. You have to wait until I call on you again. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I do know that there is a process for decisions like this, and going to committee and getting the appropriate entities involved in this for this decision to be made. It was not made lightly the last time we had to do it, nor should it be this time. And I think we're premature on even discussing this at this moment. But I would like to definitely bring in the appropriate officials who guide us with our budget and all the things that affect the budget and the various functions of the city of St. Louis. This is not about who makes how much money. I don't think that's fair, because people are hired to do a job at a certain salary, and it was agreed upon, and we agree with the budget. And so that's not a discussion to be had. But what I'd like to do is to make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves and not knowing and understanding the effects of everything and when it is appropriate to do it. That's all I ask. So taking it to committee is one thing that can help with that. And I think we should be smart and prudent to follow our own guidelines with the appropriate entities throughout this process. And Ways and Means is not going to just approve a budget and walk away. We'll continue to have oversight. The budget director, our comptroller, all those entities really must be involved in this. And I thank you for the opportunity, sir.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to inquire the Alderman from the 23rd, please.
Alderman from the 23rd, will you yield the question to the Alderwoman from the 11th?
Yes, I will.
Alderwoman from the 11th, please proceed.
Thank you. I'm not opposed to something like this. I just had some questions, and maybe I'll sound like a broken record after what some of our colleagues have said, but do you plan on having a fiscal note prepared on this if it goes to committee?
Yes, and I would want to correct something, that this does not affect all the employees. The Alderwoman from the 14th said there's employees that cannot. This only calls for elected officials and people that are making over $100,000. Not anybody under 100. There's people making 80, 90,000, whatever. It does not affect them. It doesn't affect anybody making 30,000. This is just saying that the really what I remember from the last time, it was elected officials and like appointed heads of departments. But rather than actually point that out that way, I thought it would be easier to say anyone making a salary over $100,000. And my issue had to do with everybody got, not us, the aldermen don't get anything, but everybody got a 1.5% pay raise. Some people got 1.5% of $200,000 and $300,000 that they make, where other people only got 1.5% of the 20-something thousand dollars they make. So where some people, and I've always felt it's an unfair the way they do that, then the money should be just a pot divided, because I'd rather have 1.5% of 300,000 than 1.5%. But that's why I worded it that way. So this does not, in response to the Alderwoman, this was put together, and certainly it should go to committee. And even the last time, not everyone took it. And I don't know that it was very public as to who took it and who didn't. It was 1 week for, to be honest with you, actually the alderman couldn't take it because it's against any ordinance or law for us to turn back our money. But we did it anyway. Some of us took 2 weeks, some took 1 week, some took a day. It was very mixed as to what the alderman took. By law, no elected official can say, gee, I'll work for free. I'm sorry, I'm getting on a tangent.
That's okay. I mean, I appreciate what I appreciate what you're saying, especially about the percentages of the raises. Just the other concern I have too is that, and not to say this couldn't be figured out, but I feel like our budget is just, it's so siloed. Yesterday where there was the mention of the special funds, and then today during our board meeting, the mayor's announcing some sort of budgetary announcement that we have no idea and that we didn't know in our discussions or in Ways and Means discussion the last couple of days. Do you have an idea or recommendation on how this money would be either dispersed or allocated? What fund?
I would hope that in committee that we could come up with that, even if it's, I mean, I'm sure there's only certain places it can go. I don't think we want to put it in the general fund, but maybe we could put it in the demolition, maybe we could put it into housing. I'm not sure. It's not going to be a tremendous amount of money. If all of it comes out to be between $300,000 and $500,000, it's not like it's going to solve our budget. It might help with something. And certainly we'll put it in committee, you know, and then it's up to whoever chairs that committee. And I'm fine with whatever committee it goes to as to how they proceed along. I mean, it could go into legislation. It could go, I'll leave it up to the president where it goes. I don't believe it goes to public safety because I don't see that. But so I think it would be up to the chairman to schedule the meetings and to discuss it. This was just my thought when I'm, you know, it came up, realistically, it came up, Elliot Davis somewhat started it and asked me that question. So I said, well, you know, and so when they asked the mayor's office, or they actually asked Conway, and I think it was part of a news thing, he said, well, the mayor's already made major cuts already. And I replied, well, it's easy to make cuts to other people. Then he asked, well, then what do you propose? I said, well, then maybe we should take a hit first. And it was in response to that is what it was.
Okay. No, and I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that, I mean, I think it certainly could be a gesture. I just want to make sure that it has a meaningful impact and not just necessarily political. You know, the folks making over $100,000, sure, that certainly is a lot of money, but they may also have $100,000 in debt to student loans because of their expertise and why we hired them. So I really just, if we are going to cut any city employee's salary, I want to make sure that we need to do it and it goes where it needs to go and actually has an impact and it isn't just a political gesture from us, which we can certainly make on our own. So thank you very much. I appreciate the discussion.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Alderman from the 16th. Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the Alderman from the 23rd yield for question?
Alderman from the 23rd will yield the question until the Alderman from the 21st.
Always for my friend Jack.
Okay.
My buddy. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Alderman. You say Elliot Davis brought this idea to you? I'm trying to figure out where the imagination behind this board bill.
So Elliot Davis talked to me about the budget and asked if we're going to do furloughs. I guess he was very aware we had done them in the past. My suggestion, and so when I was talking, which I did on camera, I said, if there's cuts that are made, and you go back and look at it, that we should lead the way, that the Board of Aldermen and you know, the heads of departments. So I talked to Lou Golly at that point because, you know, we had discussed how this would be worded, what's the best way. You know, one of the things that Elliot said, if we do furloughs, you know, say the mayor would furlough, can she furlough? So the furloughs could be taken a half a day at a time. They could be taken one day out of the check, you know, over time. So yes, so the thought of the furloughs and coming back to that certainly was an answer to a question, which then I felt, well, we should lead the way. Now, I know that it's not a popular thing amongst anybody. Nobody wants to lose a week's salary, including me. Believe me, I got bills the same as everybody else. So, you know, so it came about with a question, and that was my answer to his question. Then I checked into it with Lou Golly to see, and I did ask Gerard how much it would bring in. His estimate was about 300,000, but it was just a guess. So, you know, like at this point, like I said, I'm more than willing to have it in committee where we can at least talk about it and maybe bring in not city employees, but bring in the employees that make over $100,000 to discuss it.
You know, Alderman, but it's only 2 employees of the Board of Aldermen that makes over $100,000.
No. No, I know city employees that make over 100,000. The director of the airport, I can go down the list, the mayor's chief of staff, people, and I'm not talking about aldermen. Alderman's salary is $38,000.
Right. In the resolution, it says city elected officials and members of the board and employees of the board of aldermen.
Right, because
that's what the resolution says. So I'm just going off what the resolution says. So the resolution is calling on aldermen to basically give up their salary, a salary that only costs the city just a little over $1 million.
Right. Chad, I don't disagree. That's why I'm saying let's put it in committee where we can talk about it. Everything starts somewhere, and any changes could be made in committee. This is not put out there to embarrass or do anything. I'm perfectly willing to move it to committee. You know, we put stuff out because we believe in, and then for whatever purposes as we discuss it, maybe we have changes, amendments. Again, this isn't a board bill. It's only a resolution. It's just a thought.
Yeah, but no, I think it's more than just for fun. I think it also expresses
not for fun.
It expresses our feelings, or it expresses what we think about a particular issue, and this could lead to something else. We don't know what this could lead to. This is like opening up Pandora's box. And I get the idea of the resolution, and I applaud that idea, but I think that it's wrongly guided. I think that if we really want to save money, I think we need to look at this frivolous spending that we have going on in the city. We're paying directors and commissioners $200,000, $300,000 to do the same job. I think we need to start there. I don't think starting with one of the lowest paid aspects of city government will help. And I guess Elliot Davis, you know, him being the expert legislator that he is, I guess he would know that you know, just eliminating the board of aldermen or taking our salary will save the money, will save the city trillions of dollars. So
no, well, and again,
I appreciate Alderman Elliot Davis.
No, so again, this does not affect the lower paid employees. And at some point, and we could even readjust this in committee to say that before we ask city employees, all city employees to take a furlough, that we would be the first one. And I would be fine with adjusting it in committee.
All right. Any further discussion, Alderman, from the 21st? You're muted. You're currently muted, Alderman.
Thank you, Alderman Vaccaro. You're my buddy.
All right. Thank you. Alderman from the 25th.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to point out that when we did do this back in 2009, and I believe actually 2010, I think we did it 2 fiscal years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. These actions were very much planned in advance. They were communicated in advance. I think the alderman from the 24th Ward had an excellent point in that you know, we do have older people in particular who are in various you know, degrees of financial dependence on the salary, whether it be for themselves and or their families. But I think, you know, when we did go through this the last time, there was the opportunity to take it in increments over a full year, whereas now we're coming up, you know, with just a few months left in the fiscal year. And so you're looking at, you know, just giving that up, you know, in its entirety, basically within a month or two, you know, coming up once this resolution ends up passing out of committee, if it passes out of committee. But two, you know, this being a resolution, it certainly isn't binding on anyone. So it does make it feel as though it's not taking the matter as seriously as we should be taking it serious. And that it is just a political gesture instead of, you know, actually putting pen to paper, legislating, working with the city budget, working, we have pay bills that come through. We have, the city's budget, obviously, that, we have to work through. If there are going to be furloughs of employees, then, that needs to work its way through the budgetary process. I understand the alderman's sentiment to, want to get ahead of it or, lead by example. But I think we also need to understand, how is this going to contribute back to the city's budget? What are we going to do with the funds? I don't think it's particularly, a significant amount of money that you're going to end up getting, via this resolution. The alderman keeps throwing out, city employees that are making $300,000. To my knowledge, there's not a single city employee that's making $300,000. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the director of airports is the highest paid position in city government. And, she makes right around $220,000, maybe a little bit more, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not aware of any elected office or any city employee who makes, more than, $250,000. So to say that there's, city employees out there making $300,000 or more, I think is very unfair to our city employees as well. Most of them are making well under $100,000. So even folks who are making $100,000, there aren't that many of those folks either. I mean, legitimately, we're not looking at a lot of people in that respect. But I believe it was, my colleague from maybe the 14th ward, who mentioned, that, or maybe it was the 8th, but regardless, I think, you're talking about folks even at $100,000, no, it was the 11th ward, who have obligations as well, and here we are coming up on the end of the fiscal year. There's not a lot of opportunity to plan. And when we did do these actions in the past, we did them in advance so that people had the opportunity to plan. They could select when they were opting to take their furlough time or which pay cycle that they wanted to miss time or money from. And so I think that that's a really important factor here as well. And certainly we can discuss it in committee, but these are very serious matters that need to be discussed. They shouldn't be done on a whim. I don't think that they should be done via resolution, but if that's the route the alderman from the 23rd chooses to take, I think that certainly we can have that discussion in committee. But I do believe that we need to afford people the opportunity to plan, which I don't think, given the timing left in the fiscal year currently, that's an option right now. Anyways, that's about all I have to say to wrap up, and I would certainly appreciate this being referred to committee.
All right, thank you. And just to underscore the discussions today, the current lead alderman from the 23rd has not made a request for unanimous consent, has not made a request to send this to committee or anything, right? And you can do that with a resolution. But that leaves it open, that has left it open to a much broader discussion, a discussion that would best be suited in committee, right? So we're essentially covering some of the things that you all would be covering in the committee hearing. I would recommend that the alderman from the 23rd, if you're looking to send this to committee, make a motion to send this to committee. You can send it to Ways and Means or Public Employees, but you are well within your rights, according to our rules, to discuss this resolution without making a motion, right? Opposed to, what we have to do when we have a board bill. But due to the nature of the discussions and the way they're going, if you are planning to send it to committee, I would appreciate a motion now to send it to committee. That way these discussions can continue in committee where they would have a much better opportunity to have a much longer discussion on. You can send it to Ways and Means or Public Employees. I think both of those committees would be good fits. Alderman from the 23rd.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we send it, well, either one's fine with me. We can, let's do it to public employees
All right.
because
All
I
right.
don't sit on that.
That's all I need. Alderman from the 23rd, you has moved that we assign resolution 13 to public employees. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Assign resolution 13 to Let me start that over. Anyone who did not get a chance to talk today, I am going to ask that the chairman of public employees please give you an opportunity to speak on this issue because it affects each and every one of us. Alderwoman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to, I have placed on all of the aldermen's mailboxes by way of email a resolution to consider. I'd like to request the suspension of.
Alderwoman, if you have not contacted each and every alderperson to assure that they printed those out, we cannot do that kind of thing today. We're not at the full board so that people can have access to those documents. I don't have access to them, and we can't do that today. Please bring your resolution next week. Second reading.
Resolution 8.
Mr. President.
Sponsored by Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Rice, Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderwoman Navarro, and Alderwoman Middlebrook. Absentee voting during COVID-19.
Alderwoman from the 15th, you recognize on the second reading the resolution number 8.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. First, I'd like to point out, I think that some of the co-sponsors are not listed on our agenda. The website seems to be complete, but I think that there's a total of 17 co-sponsors on this. So I do want to make sure that that is all taken care of.
We'll have the, Madam Clerk, could you please read the list of all the co-sponsors for Resolution 8, if you have?
Let me go to the website.
All right, you can grab those. Well, Alderwoman from the 15th, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Just as a refresher, Resolution 8 is the resolution that would have us follow the lead of St. Louis County by asking our Board of Election Commissioners to mail out absentee ballot applications to everybody who is 65 years of age, or 60 years of age or older within the city at minimum, and at maximum, every registered voter in the city of St. Louis. St. Louis County did this a few weeks ago. Again, we are not sending ballots to people. We are just making it easier to for them to request an absentee ballot application and informing people in that process with a letter from the Board of Elections that would detail that under COVID-19, being confined due to illness is a way that you can vote absentee. Since we last talked about this at the full board just a few weeks ago, the General Assembly did pass SB 631. And that Senate bill sets out kind of two categories for being able to vote via absentee because of COVID-19. If you're in an at-risk category, 65 or older, are immunocompromised, have any of the myriad of things that make you more at risk for COVID-19, you can request a ballot and vote absentee without having to notarize. If you do not fit into one of those at-risk categories under that bill, you can still vote absentee, but you would have to have that ballot notarized. And so we're asking the Board of Election Commissioners basically to take a proactive stance on this. to make it as easy as possible for folks to access absentee ballot applications and access the ballot box all the way through November. So I appreciate the support of so many members of the Board of Aldermen and would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 8.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 15th that we adopt Resolution 8. I entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 7th and a few others that I missed, but Alderman from the 7th. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 13th.
Mute me. Oh, yeah, no, Mr. President, my question was going to be, I thought I was a sponsor. So if not, I want to make sure a co-sponsor, I'm sorry. I want to make sure my name is on that. So that was my question. I know they're checking now, so.
Okay. All right, excellent. Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderwoman from the 15th would yield.
Alderwoman from the 15th will yield the question instead of Alderwoman from the 1st.
Yes.
Alderwoman from the 1st, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Alderwoman, I know you and I have been speaking about this in this resolution, and we've been following that what the General Assembly did. Do you know if the governor signed this bill or not?
He has not, but my understanding from talking with voting rights activist Denise Lieberman testified in committee earlier this week on this bill that they think that he will sign it this next week, but it goes into effect immediately, and so he didn't want to sign it when we have elections on Tuesday in a good portion of the state, which could have kind of upset that there would not have been the time to implement this quickly across the state.
Okay, and I request that my name be added. I have no further questions.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Add all the one from the 1st. Alderwoman from the 20th.
Mr. President, I still have my hand raised.
Well, if you're talking about the resolution, that is not up for discussion. You can talk. Please feel free to reach out to me after the meeting. Madam Clerk, let's see, next one. The Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I just wanted to thank the Alderwoman from the 15th and say I think this is a great idea to get absentee ballot applications in everyone's hands leading up to the August election. I think it would also be good as we move forward for this board to try to coordinate with the election board and figure out how we can help them supplement what is going to probably be a shortage of election day poll workers, actual election judges. You know, this is a population that's generally much older. It's a retired population that helps run our elections every couple times a year usually. I think it would be great if we could figure out a way to get city employees, court employees, and other folks who have familiarity with complex systems and computers and everything to step in and maybe take the day and work for the election board. I'm hoping we can get something figured out on that front in the coming months. Thank you for this, Alderwoman, and I'm glad to see the legislature take some action, adding some steps to allow COVID as an excuse for absentee voting going forward.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I didn't make the hearing when I guess this resolution was in the hearing or whatever. But did the Board of Elections come and testify and state that they would be up to par to actually assist with this, or are we just waiting for the state, or what?
Would you want to inquire of the Alderwoman from
I'm sorry, of the Alderwoman from the 15th with
Alderwoman from the 15th will yield the question to the Alderwoman from the 5th.
So the Board of Elections has not reached a decision either way on this issue as of yet. And I think that our voice behind this can give them the impetus that they need to take the step to do this, to say that, they have the backing of the full Board of Aldermen, and they have the backing. I know a lot of us have heard concerns from our constituents in doing this. Again, this is a resolution, so at the end of the day, it'll be up to the Board of Election Commissioners to decide to do this or not. Although the city of St. Louis, independent of the Board of Election Commissioners, we could actually send absentee ballot applications as well. Any entity can. We can't send ballots, but applications, anybody can give those out. And so, you know, my hope in doing this is it gives the extra oomph that we need to get the Board of Election Commissioners to decide to do this.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
All right. Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes, I was just going to ask, and maybe it's not a good idea, but I was kind of hoping we could just put it in bank, you know, that we all support this together. It looks a little stronger. Again, it's just a resolution. It's not a board bill. So I'm making a motion that we put it in bank, and it's up to everybody.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we make this resolution in bank. Is there any objection to that motion? Any objection to that motion? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Mr. President? Oh, were you recognizing my hand being raised?
Yes.
Okay, it's been taken care of. Thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman from the 27th. Alderwoman from the 27th. Alderwoman from the 27th. Okay. Alderwoman from the 1st.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I just wanted to remind all of us Democrats down there that we just have, at this point, unless they've hired in the last 2 days, a Republican director over at the Board of Elections, and we need to get a Democratic director over there so that we can make sure that, I'm sure everything is fair, but we need to make sure he has help. So we're only getting half of, we're getting the Republican view represented, and so we need to find a Democratic director to send over to the Board of Elections if that has not been taken care of right now.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 15th, seconded by the Alderman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution number 8. It's also been amended in bank. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And it's the second reading resolutions.
All right, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have
Announcements.
Saturday, May 30th, 2020, Ways and Means will have a public comment hearing, 10 a.m. via webinar. Tuesday, June 2nd, Ways and Means will have a meeting 10 a.m. webinar. Wednesday, June 3rd, HUDs will have a meeting 9 a.m. webinar. Rules will meet at 10 a.m. via webinar. Thursday, June 4th, Transportation will have a meeting 10 a.m. via webinar. And Friday, June 5th, full board meeting 10 a.m. via webinar. That is the extent of the announcements.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Before we wrap up, I just want to remind everyone about the structure of these meetings while we're having these online meetings. As I mentioned when we first did our training, it's so important that you are organized and you get all your stuff in on time. So, you know, I want to thank all the aldermen who have abided by that so that we can actually have the things on the agenda in front of us, and that we assure that there's fair and informed deliberation on the things that we are working on. So I'm asking all the ones from the 20th to adhere to that. We cannot get things at the last minute and just, you know, suspend the rules and put them in when people have not seen them, read them, or understand what they're dealing with, because we are in a different setting here today. So again, thanks to everyone that has done that consistently. It has allowed us to run these meetings in a balanced and fair way. that's been informative, and that has, upheld the nature of what the Board of Aldermen is. So I appreciate everybody for doing that. Madam Clerk, anything further?
That's the extent of the announcements.
All right, Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two items. One, to your point about the kind of circumstances that we're operating in currently, do we have a timeline by which we can expect?
Not that I can give you today, but I'll send out an email, and I'm working with the clerk right now to determine that.
Okay, so, and also, are we allowed to go back into the office? So
yes, if you want to go back in the office, if you need to get access to the office, you can get access to the office for whatever you need. And that's up to you, right? So you just go to enter through the circle drive. If the other doors are locked, enter through the circle drive. The guard will allow you access, and then you just go up to the office, and you should have the key to the Board of Aldermen's door to go in and check your mail or whatever you feel like you need to do.
Sure.
But
okay.
But I'm gonna be in discussions with I'm already in discussions with the clerk, so we'll get more information out to you as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. And then I also came in slightly late during roll call, but I don't recall this happening. But if not, can we have a moment of silence for George Floyd?
Oh, we did not. Thank you, Alderman. Yes, would you like to, or you want me to do it, or you're going to do it?
I'm just requesting that we do it.
Okay, I'll do it. Would everyone, I'll ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence for George Floyd. Thank you all. Thank you all. And Alderman from 25th, thanks for that. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman, if again, I will recognize all the one from the 20th and all the one from the 8th, but I'm telling you, I'm cutting you off if you want to get into a long drawn out discussion about not being organized for today's meeting. If you have announcement unrelated to that, I will recognize you. If it's not related to that, please take your hand out. Is it related to something other than you not having your information in time for today's agenda? Yes or no? You shake your head, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Alderwoman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question and it refers to what Alderman Cohn was saying. As we are continuing to meet in this format, I'm wondering if we can get some more procedures as far as who is doing the muting and unmuting and how those things work. If we could get sort of a written plan and a common understanding of how points of order are being made and when microphones will be unmuted, because a few times over the last several weeks, members of our body have been cut off in the middle of speaking or close to the end of how they were speaking, and sometimes we can't get unmuted and back and forth. And so I think it would be helpful to have a common understanding of who's doing the muting and unmuting and how we control that.
All right, that should have been in the original documents that we gave to you. I'll send that information out again. What you may be experiencing is just that lag in time, right, from muting to unmuting, because when you are unmuted by the people who are managing the forum, right, we still have to wait for each individual alderman to unmute themselves, right? So there's a lag in time on those things. So, but you should have all that information. We'll send it out to you again. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 20th, do you have an announcement?
I do, Mr. President.
All right, please proceed.
I would like to announce a Health and Human Services Committee hearing next Thursday at 11 a.m. I would also like to request from your office some clarification on the rules related to introducing on the floor, which is a part of—
Alderwoman, we're not going to discuss that. We're moving forward. You have the information. Please read the information and understand the information moving forward. Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, all members are present.
All right, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move to adjourn to next Friday, June 5th at 10 a.m.
Moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 13th, and Alderman from the 10th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You
No.
all have a great week. A little late, Alderman. You all have a great weekend. Appreciate all y'all. Thank you so much for all your continued hard work.